There are real legends about the missing plane, which disappeared in 1955 under unclear circumstances and returned only 37 years later. This story sends shivers down the spine and has been stirring people's minds for more than 60 years. What is it? A joke of time or an ordinary fiction? Let's try to find out. How it all began on July 2, 1955, Pan American Airways Flight 914 took off from New York and was scheduled to land at 9:55 a.m. in Miami. There were 61 people on board, 57 passengers and 4 crew members. 3 hours later, the pilots stopped communicating and the airliner suddenly disappeared from radar. Since the route was partly over the Atlantic Ocean, aviation officials assumed that the plane crashed over the water and drowned. Immediately a large-scale search was organized, which yielded no results. Not a single piece of wreckage was found. The huge machine seemed to have vanished into thin air. Despite the fact that the aircraft had been reported missing, the U.S. authorities had no choice but to declare it a wreck. 37 years later the plane was forgotten for some time, but after exactly 37 years, it reappeared unexpectedly in Venezuela. On September 9, 1992, Juan de la Corte, a dispatcher at Caracas Airport, saw an unidentified object on the radar. Within 10 minutes, it was clear that an unplanned aircraft was approaching the airport. And when the controllers took a closer look, it turned out that the airliner was very old. These were produced almost 40 years ago. Juan de la Corte rushed to contact the crew of the mysterious plane by radio. He asked where the airliner was going, and the crew received the following reply. "This is Flight 914. We are en route to Florida, from New York to Miami. There are 57 passengers and 4 crew on board." Juan de la Corte radioed that the plane had deviated from its route by 1,500 kilometers and reported the current date. May 21, 1992. There was no response, but the air traffic controllers could clearly hear expressive cursing. Imagine the surprise of the Caracas airport controllers when they realized that the airliner that had disappeared 37 years earlier was approaching them. Nevertheless, a decision was made to urgently prepare the runway to receive the aircraft. The airliner landed safely and the airport staff rushed to it. But the crew commander was in no hurry to make contact. Instead, he gestured for them to be left alone, and a few minutes later the plane took off as if nothing had happened and disappeared into the clouds. Immediately an investigation began. Eyewitnesses assured that the faces of the passengers who leaned against the porthole were contorted with grimaces of horror. Everything could have been written off as a hallucination, if not for a calendar found on the spot, dated 1955. No other evidence of the presence of the plane at Caracas Airport could be found. What was this? A mass madness? A fiction? Or a time-traveling phantom? These questions remain open.